Frank Martinez noticed things other bus drivers missed, which passengers never paid full fare, which stops attracted unusual foot traffic, which conversations stopped when he looked in his rearview mirror. After 20 years in narcotics enforcement, patterns jumped out at him even during routine city routes. I wonder where you're watching this from today. Whether you're commuting on public transportation or driving your own car, you've probably encountered them. Bus drivers who know every route by heart, who remember regular passengers, who navigate through city traffic with practiced ease. But how often do we consider what expertise these professional drivers might possess beyond their transportation skills? Today's story will change how you see the people behind the wheel of public transit. Frank Martinez had been driving Route 47 through downtown Phoenix for 8 years. At 62, he had the steady demeanor and infinite patience that made him perfect for public transportation work. He knew every stop, every traffic pattern, and every shortcut that could save passengers time during rush hour delays. Regular riders appreciated Frank's reliability and courtesy. He waited for elderly passengers struggling with mobility, helped parents with strollers navigate the bus steps, and maintained order during crowded commutes without ever raising his voice. He had a reputation for being unflappable, the driver who could handle any situation with calm professionalism. Frank's bus was clean, his uniform was always pressed, and his driving record was spotless. Supervisors considered him their most dependable operator, someone who could be trusted with difficult routes and challenging schedules without complaint or incident. To passengers and colleagues, Frank appeared to be exactly what he seemed, a dedicated public servant who took pride in safely transporting people throughout the city. His presence was reassuring, his competence was obvious, and his commitment to his job was unquestionable. But Frank's observational skills extended far beyond what was required for safe driving and customer service. Before Frank became a bus driver, he had spent 20 years as Detective Frank Martinez with the Phoenix Police Department's Narcotics Division. He had worked undercover operations, conducted surveillance investigations, and dismantled drug distribution networks throughout Arizona and across the southwestern United States. Detective Martinez had developed expertise in recognizing drug trafficking patterns, identifying criminal behavior, and connecting seemingly unrelated activities into comprehensive cases that resulted in major arrests and prosecutions. His work had taken him from street-level dealers to international cartel operations. Frank's specialty had been transportation-based drug distribution, how criminal organizations used legitimate travel methods to move narcotics, money, and personnel while avoiding law enforcement detection. He understood how buses, trains, airports, and highways served as corridors for illegal commerce. But after 2 decades of dangerous undercover work, violent confrontations, and constant exposure to the worst aspects of drug-related crime, Frank had reached his breaking point. A particularly brutal case involving cartel violence had left him emotionally exhausted and psychologically damaged. When he became eligible for retirement, Frank had chosen to leave law enforcement entirely. He wanted work that would provide structure and purpose without the constant danger and moral complexity that had defined his detective career. Bus driving offered the perfect transition, a job that kept him connected to his community while providing the emotional distance he needed to heal from 20 years of narcotics enforcement. For 8 years, Frank had successfully maintained this separation between his past and present lives. He drove his route, served his passengers, and avoided thinking about criminal patterns or suspicious activities. But some training never disappears, and some instincts never stop working. It began 6 weeks ago with observations that Frank initially tried to ignore. Certain passengers on Route 47 were exhibiting behaviors that triggered his dormant investigative instincts, behaviors that suggested coordination, planning, and purposes beyond legitimate transportation. The first pattern involved timing and positioning. A group of passengers, apparently unconnected, consistently boarded at specific stops and positioned themselves in precise locations throughout the bus. They never sat together, rarely acknowledged each other, but maintained visual contact and communication through subtle signals. Frank recognized these techniques because he had once used them himself during undercover operations. This was textbook surveillance and counter-surveillance behavior designed to appear random while maintaining operational security. The second pattern involved the passengers themselves. They paid fares in cash, avoided eye contact with security cameras, and carried minimal personal items. Most significantly, they exhibited the hyper-awareness and nervous energy that Frank associated with individuals engaged in criminal activity. The third pattern was the most troubling: coded communications and small item exchanges that occurred during routine bus operations. Passengers would pass objects, whisper brief messages, and coordinate activities using hand signals that appeared casual but followed structured protocols. Frank's 20 years of narcotics experience told him he was witnessing a drug distribution network that was using public transportation as cover for their operations. Despite his desire to remain uninvolved, Frank found himself automatically cataloging these observations with the systematic approach he had once used for criminal investigations. His trained mind documented faces, noted timing patterns, and identified communication methods, even as he consciously tried to focus solely on driving. Frank began recognizing specific individuals who appeared regularly but maintained different seating patterns, clothing styles, and behavioral presentations. These were operational techniques designed to avoid recognition by law enforcement, techniques that were invisible to civilians but obvious to someone with Frank's background. Most concerning was the apparent structure of the operation. Frank identified what appeared to be supervisors, runners, and lookouts working in coordinated teams. The hierarchy and discipline suggested this wasn't small-time dealing, but rather a sophisticated distribution network with significant resources and planning capabilities. Frank realized that Route 47 passed through several neighborhoods with known drug activity, connected to transportation hubs that provided access to other parts of the city, and operated on schedules that aligned perfectly with school dismissal times and shift changes at local businesses. The bus route had been selected strategically by criminals who understood that public transportation provided both mobility and camouflage for their illegal activities. Frank faced a complex personal dilemma. His retirement from law enforcement had been motivated by burnout, trauma, and a desperate need for peaceful work that didn't involve criminal investigations. He had spent 8 years successfully avoiding involvement in police matters, but his observations suggested that innocent passengers, including children and elderly residents, were being exposed to drug trafficking activities during their daily commutes. The criminals were using public transportation to conduct business that put vulnerable community members at risk. Frank's professional conscience warred with his personal need for emotional distance from criminal activity. He had expertise that could potentially dismantle a significant drug operation, but using that expertise would drag him back into the world he had worked so hard to leave behind. For several days, Frank tried to convince himself that he could simply report his observations to police and let other investigators handle the case. But his experience told him that the operation was too sophisticated for standard patrol responses and too integrated into routine transportation patterns for typical narcotics enforcement approaches. Frank made a decision that would test his ability to balance his desire for peace with his responsibility to protect his community. Frank began documenting the criminal activity with the systematic precision of a professional investigation. He noted passenger descriptions, recorded timing patterns, mapped operational territories, and identified communication methods with evidence quality detail. His position as bus driver provided perfect cover for this surveillance. Criminals expected drivers to focus on traffic and safety, not on passenger activities. Frank could observe, listen, and document without raising suspicions about his true level of awareness. Frank also began varying his driving patterns slightly to test the criminals' responses and gather additional intelligence. He adjusted timing at specific stops, took alternate routes when traffic permitted, and created opportunities to observe passenger reactions to changes in routine. The criminals' responses confirmed Frank's assessment of their sophistication. They adapted quickly to route variations, maintained operational security despite disruptions, and demonstrated the kind of disciplined flexibility that suggested extensive training and experience. Frank realized he was dealing with professionals who understood law enforcement tactics and had developed countermeasures specifically designed to avoid detection during transportation-based operations. The criminal operation escalated in ways that confirmed Frank's worst suspicions. Instead of small-scale drug distribution, the network appeared to be coordinating larger shipments, managing multiple territories, and integrating with other criminal activities throughout the city. Frank observed passengers receiving what appeared to be instructions for activities beyond simple drug sales. Communications included references to weapons, territory disputes, and enforcement actions that suggested the organization was expanding into more serious criminal enterprises. Most troubling was the increasing involvement of juveniles in the operation. Frank noticed teenagers being recruited, trained, and assigned specific roles within the distribution network. These young people were being systematically drawn into criminal activity that would destroy their futures and endanger their communities. Frank's parental instincts combined with his professional knowledge to create an urgent sense that intervention was necessary before the situation escalated further. On a Tuesday morning in March, Frank observed a passenger exchange that changed everything. Two individuals coordinated the transfer of a package that Frank's experience identified as containing either large quantities of drugs or significant amounts of cash, possibly both. More significantly, Frank overheard planning discussions that indicated the operation was preparing for a major expansion that would involve violence against competing organizations and increased recruitment of juveniles from local schools. Frank realized that his passive observation had reached its limits. The criminal network was planning activities that would directly endanger community members, particularly children who attended schools along his bus route. Frank made a decision that would end his 8-year separation from law enforcement work. Frank contacted Detective Sarah Williams with the Phoenix Police Narcotics Division, identifying himself by his service record and requesting a meeting about transportation-related drug distribution activities on Route 47. Detective Williams checked Frank's background and agreed to meet, intrigued by the report from a retired narcotics detective who had maintained legendary status within the department for his undercover work and investigative successes. Frank Martinez, Detective Williams said during their meeting, "Your cases are still used for training purposes. The Sonoran cartel investigation is considered a textbook example of long-term narcotics enforcement." Frank provided Williams with comprehensive intelligence about the Route 47 operation, including detailed passenger profiles, operational patterns, and evidence quality documentation of criminal activities. His analysis revealed a sophisticated network that had been operating undetected for months. This level of organization suggests connection to larger criminal enterprises, Frank explained. The techniques they're using indicate training, resources, and coordination that goes beyond local distribution. Detective Williams' team launched a comprehensive investigation based on Frank's intelligence, discovering that the Route 47 operation was indeed connected to a major drug distribution network with ties to Mexican cartels and operations throughout the southwestern United States. Frank's observations provided the foundation for a multi-agency investigation involving local police, DEA, and FBI resources. His documentation of passenger activities, timing patterns, and communication methods gave investigators the detailed intelligence needed to build comprehensive cases against multiple defendants. The investigation revealed that public transportation systems throughout Phoenix have been systematically infiltrated by criminal organizations seeking to use legitimate travel methods as cover for illegal activities. Frank agreed to serve as a consultant during the investigation, providing expertise about transportation-based criminal operations while maintaining his bus driving duties as cover for continued surveillance activities. The multi-agency operation resulted in the arrest of 47 individuals connected to the drug distribution network, seizure of significant quantities of narcotics and cash, and dismantling of criminal operations across multiple bus routes and transportation corridors. Frank's intelligence proved critical not only for the Route 47 investigation, but also for identifying similar operations throughout the Phoenix public transportation system. His expertise in recognizing trafficking patterns led to discoveries of criminal activities that other investigators had missed. Chief of Police Robert Chun commended Frank's work during a ceremony honoring civilian contributions to law enforcement. Detective Martinez's observations and analysis prevented our public transportation system from becoming a highway for drug distribution, Chun stated. Frank received awards from both the Phoenix Police Department and the Transportation Authority for his role in the investigation. But he valued most the letters from community members whose neighborhoods had been freed from drug-related crime. "You made our bus routes safe for our children again," wrote Maria Santos, a parent whose daughter rode Route 47 to school daily. "Thank you for watching over our community." The case became a training example for law enforcement agencies nationwide, demonstrating how transportation professionals with investigative backgrounds could serve as valuable intelligence assets for criminal investigations. Frank's success led to the creation of a transportation security liaison program that paired retired law enforcement officers with public transportation jobs. The program provided both employment opportunities for experienced investigators and enhanced security for public transit systems. Frank continued driving Route 47 while serving as a consultant for transportation-related criminal investigations. His dual role allowed him to use his expertise while maintaining the peaceful work environment he needed for psychological well-being. The program expanded to include former military personnel, security professionals, and other individuals whose backgrounds provided valuable observational and analytical capabilities for community protection efforts. Frank's work led to significant changes in how public transportation systems approach security and criminal activity detection. Training programs were developed to help transit employees recognize signs of drug trafficking, human trafficking, and other criminal activities that exploit transportation networks. The Phoenix Transportation Authority implemented reporting protocols that allowed drivers and other employees to confidentially share observations about suspicious passenger activities. Similar programs were adopted by transit systems across the country. But the most important change was cultural recognition that public transportation employees possess unique observational capabilities that can contribute significantly to community safety and criminal investigations. 5 years after the Route 47 investigation, Frank Martinez continues driving his bus route while serving as a transportation security consultant. His work has expanded to include training other transit employees in pattern recognition and threat assessment. Frank has helped identify and dismantle criminal operations across multiple transportation systems, preventing drug distribution networks from exploiting public transit to harm communities. His experience demonstrates that expertise in criminal investigation can be successfully integrated with civilian employment, providing both personal fulfillment and community protection. Frank's success inspired other retired law enforcement officers to seek employment in positions that allowed them to continue using their investigative skills while serving their communities in different capacities. The Transportation Security Liaison Program has documented dozens of cases where former police officers, military personnel, and security professionals have identified criminal activities through their civilian employment in transportation, retail, and service industries. These individuals create an invisible network of experienced observers who can recognize threats and provide early warning systems for various forms of criminal activity. Frank found that his role as transportation security consultant provided the satisfaction of protecting his community without the stress and danger of active law enforcement work. He could use his investigative skills proactively rather than reactively, preventing crimes rather than just responding to them. The integration of his detective expertise with his bus driving duties created a unique form of public service that addressed both transportation needs and community safety concerns simultaneously. Frank's work demonstrated that retirement from law enforcement doesn't necessarily mean abandoning the skills and dedication that define professional investigators. Frank's intervention prevented the expansion of drug trafficking networks that were targeting schools, recruiting juveniles, and introducing violence into peaceful neighborhoods. His work protected not only his bus passengers, but entire communities that were threatened by the criminal organizations he helped dismantle. The removal of drug distribution networks from public transportation restored confidence in transit systems and made buses safer for vulnerable passengers, particularly children and elderly residents. Frank's success proved that community safety depends not just on official law enforcement response, but also on the observational capabilities and protective instincts of experienced professionals working in civilian capacities. Frank Martinez's transformation from burned-out detective to protective bus driver demonstrates that law enforcement expertise can be adapted and applied in numerous contexts beyond traditional police work. His story inspired communities nationwide to recognize and utilize the investigational capabilities of retired law enforcement officers who seek meaningful employment after official retirement. The principle that protection often comes from unexpected sources has become a cornerstone of community-based crime prevention initiatives. Today, Frank Martinez continues serving Phoenix residents as both bus driver and security consultant, protecting communities through his daily transportation duties while maintaining vigilance against criminal activities that exploit public systems. His route has become one of the safest in the city, not because of increased police presence, but because of the expertise and dedication of a driver who understands that true service means using whatever skills you possess to protect others. Frank's work has expanded beyond drug trafficking to include identification of human trafficking, terrorism threats, and various forms of criminal activity that target transportation systems. Where are you watching this story from today? Whether you're riding public transportation or driving your own vehicle, consider the possibility that the professional drivers around you might possess expertise that keeps you safer than you realize. Behind their uniforms and vehicles might be training, experience, and dedication that creates security networks you never notice but consistently benefit from. Frank Martinez spent 8 years trying to separate his detective expertise from his civilian employment, believing that retirement meant abandoning his investigative instincts. But when he recognized that criminals were exploiting his community's transportation system, he discovered that true service means protecting others regardless of job titles or official roles. If you found Frank's story of quiet vigilance compelling, subscribe to Everyday Life Stories for more accounts of the extraordinary expertise hiding behind ordinary job descriptions. Sometimes the most important protection comes from the most unexpected guardians, watching over us during routine commutes and daily travels. The real heroes don't always wear badges or drive patrol cars. Sometimes they wear bus driver uniforms and navigate city routes, protecting our communities one stop at a time.